roller coaster ride is our emotions. As the price is going up and down, our emotions are going up and down. And so I drew and animated that. And this one was really done for Bitcoiners, specifically. This was art I made for people who were Bitcoiners. So I published it on my site, like on a separate page that was not linked from the main page. And then I posted it to bitcointalk.org. So that's where I published it, as well as Reddit. I also published it on Reddit on our Bitcoin. And when I posted it there, it got downvoted to 0. Typical Reddit, right?
I live unbanked off of cryptocurrency, and I use Bitrefill extensively because it lets me pay with crypto at places that don't yet accept it directly. This one service, more than any other, helps me live on crypto, pay your prepaid phone bill, or buy gift cards to thousands of major retailers around the world, all with cryptocurrency, including for exact amounts so you don't have to buy more gift credit than you need for a specific purchase. You can use Bitrefill without an account, but if you get an account, you can earn rewards points, which translate to savings, and you can also hold a balance denominated in dollars or euros to protect yourself against market crashes. Go to bitrefill.com, click Create Account, and enter the referral code DCN, or follow the link in the description. So, hey everyone, I have the wonderful pleasure today of speaking with the one and only Marcus Cotter of Bitcoin roller coaster guy fame. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty fantastic, and especially when, chatting with a living legend such as yourself that a lot of people don't even really know that much about. So for the, the viewers at home who are not necessarily as up to date on the whole space, do you want to just explain kind of who you are, how you got into crypto, and then I guess roll right into the famous little roller coaster guy?
Sure. So my name is Marcus, and I learned about Bitcoin fairly early, but I didn't jump right in. I tend to be a little bit slower moving, and a little more conservative with money. So around 2011, I think I got my first Bitcoin. It was given to me by Roger Ver.
Wow.
Online. And then I didn't do anything for a year.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, though, 2011 is pretty early. Like, most people say that my mid-2013 start date was really early. But, then there's a lot of people that were in there, like, 2011 could be considered almost right at the beginning for a lot of people.
It was pretty early, and, I wish I had jumped in a little bit more, but... at that time, Bitcoin was not easy to get.
Yeah.
So I got, one from Roger. And then basically, I was running the full Bitcoin client on my computer for that. What was it called? Bitcoin QT or something like that?
Yeah. And it still is. And there's a lot of QT-based wallets still today. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's what I was running at the time. And really, it was because Roger was like, I'll give 10 people a Bitcoin if you just, download the software and post up your public address. And that's what I did. But then after that, I didn't do anything literally for a year. I turned it off after a little bit. So it wasn't really until later in 2012, I moved to New Hampshire. And then I was around a lot of people who were using Bitcoin. I lived around the corner from Mandrick, and we were already friends. He was selling baklava for Bitcoin at the time. So that was really what was like, okay, now I'm around people that are into Bitcoin, and I started getting a little bit more into it. It was still challenging back then. 2012 wasn't a lot different than 2011. Like, I signed up, I was like, I'm going to sign up for an exchange, and send some money in, and I'm going to buy some Bitcoin that way. And I signed up for this exchange, and I sent my money in, and then they got shut down. And wow. I didn't get my money back for at least 6 months. It may have been longer, maybe like 8 months, 9 months. I don't know. It was a while. And so I didn't even get to buy the Bitcoin. I sent my money in, and then they got shut down. So, and it wasn't, this isn't Mount Gox. This is a different one. So that's how it was back then. It was not easy.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, that's, but that was like the very beginning of me getting into it. And then going into 2013, early 2013, that's when I ended up drawing Bitcoin Roller Coaster Guy, because, as soon as I got in, late 2012 was not much different than other times. Price up and down, right? I mean,
Yeah.
always up and down.
Do you remember what it was right around that time?
Yeah, in late 2012, the price went over 100, I think, for the first time, and then it went a lot higher, I think.
Yeah.
And then came back down. I don't remember specifically the price though, but
Yeah. Of course, it's hard to really keep track because
Yeah.
you just like look away for 10 minutes. It's something different.
Right.
I'm pretty sure when I first got mine in somewhere around September of 2013, it was somewhere around 130 per coin.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it was like, probably right around that time. And then, of course, at the end of 2013, it was about 10 times that. And that was what people's first kind of taste of glory, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So it was actually, and even before, actually in late 2012. So around at that time, people may not know this, but I was actually drawing a daily webcomic, and I published a single panel comic every day, and I did that for 9 years. So around that time was kind of in the middle of me publishing a daily webcomic, and actually in late 2012, I think it was October, I did my first Bitcoin art. In late 2012, I published a single panel called Bitcoin, and it was just a drawing of a Bitcoin that looked like a zombie, and he had been bit,
Yeah, so it's like sort of to emphasize you can't keep him down, just keeps going kind of thing.
Really, it was just like a play off of the word bit. Like, I've been
Bitcoin.
bitten, bitten. This coin has been bitten. He's a zombie. So that was my first step into doing Bitcoin art. And that one, you can see that if you go, Brainless Tales is the name of my old comic that I used to publish. If you go there and you look at 2012, you can go to the archive, look in 2012. I think it was in October.
Yeah.
You could. Anyway, that was that. But then, I had this inspiration. People were talking about, the roller coaster. I didn't obviously come up with that. Like, people were already talking about life as a roller coaster ride.
Up and down.
And our emotions, right? It's really the roller coaster ride is our emotions. As the price is going up and down, our emotions are going up and down. Just like, being on that ride. And so I drew and animated that, and I didn't actually publish that as one of my daily comics, because it was my daily comic just had a little bit different color scheme and such, and this one was really done for Bitcoiners, specifically.
Yeah.
It wasn't done for general audience. This was art I made for people who were Bitcoiners. So I published it on my site, like on a separate page that was not linked from the main page, and then I posted it to bitcointalk.org. That was where everybody used to hang out.
Oh yeah, I remember the Bitcoin Talk days way back in the day.
Right. It's people like Hal Finney were hanging out there, right? Chatting with people.
Yeah.
So that's where I published it, as well as Reddit. I also published it on Reddit on our Bitcoin. And when I posted it there, it got downvoted to 0. And
some things just don't change, huh?
Yeah. Typical Reddit, right? The original person who posts it gets downvoted, and then the reposts get upvoted. So that's really funny.
Yeah.
I think it couldn't have happened in any better way.
Yeah, I'll have to look that original post up and just see the way it is today, because it's a great kind of a reminder to people that, like, sometimes the best things in life people just freak out at, like, right away, or just don't value it in the immediate, and then later on it becomes kind of a sensation.
Yeah, I mean, lucky for me, that's kind of what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really, the luck was that it did speak to somebody. It
Yeah.
spoke to somebody, and the first inkling that I had that anybody liked it or even remembered it was when I mentioned Mandrick earlier.
Yeah.
He actually shared with me a screenshot from Bitcoinity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar with the site, classic watch Bitcoin price website.
Yeah. I think I used to use it back in the day.
Yeah, I still do because when the price goes wild, they always throw in these GIFs, these animated GIFs. Like
Yeah.
it's really fun. They still do it too. It's really great.
Nice.
Anyway, they used the roller coaster guy, and
Mm-hmm.
Mandrick was able to screenshot it and he shared it with me, and I was like, oh wow, like how exciting! Like I felt like I was famous just because my
Yeah.
animated GIF was on Bitcoinity, for like probably 20 seconds, because they don't last long. They just pop up and then they go away. So that was like the first inkling, and then not long after that, somebody, and I actually do have, if I have a dedicated website now that's called bitcoincoaster.com.
Mm-hmm.
And on the about page, I actually have a history,
Yeah.
and I do link to specific Reddit users who I think were, to my knowledge, were the first people that posted some of the different versions.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be wrong, maybe they were the reposter. It's really hard to know, but I did my best at one point to gather those up a little bit. Not all
Yeah.
of them, obviously. There's a lot of different versions, but yeah, but at some point, people like somebody else thought like, oh, I'm gonna take this and edit it, and people like that idea. They saw them going down or whatever.
Yeah. So the original meme was just the guy going up and down, a little like sine wave kind of a thing, and
Exactly.
and then people started putting like the vertical one, or then the
Yep.
other vertical one, and things like that.
Yes, I actually think the vertical down was the first one because the one you see the most has the
Mm-hmm.
red background,
Yeah.
and it makes sense to have a red background for going
Mm-hmm.
down. It doesn't make sense to have a red background for going up. It should be a green background.
Yeah,
But
of
somebody
course.
just took it and just flipped it. So I'm pretty sure that the first one was going down, which is
Yeah.
really funny. And then there's some where it's just like flat, and he's like,
He's just like
you know,
sitting there, just like
yeah.
just bored.
So
Yes.
yeah, so I was really fortunate that people loved him and they kind of took him to be their own, right? And everyone just remixed him
Mm-hmm.
and did what people do with memes, right? They turned him into a meme. I didn't make him a meme. Other people made him a meme.
Yeah. Yeah, and it became, I guess, one of the most recognizable kind of, I guess, picked pieces of culture to the whole crypto space. Probably like up there with the term hodl, the misspell
Right?
I am hodling
Right.
and stuff, and it just kind of took off. And of course, the thing is, like everyone knows, or everyone, anyone who has been in the space or chooses to investigate, everyone knows it came from that one post with that one guy, and everyone
Right.
knows, everyone kind of has proper credit. But like, how many people know where the roller coaster guy came from?
Not too many people. I think a little people are learning now. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason people don't know that it's me is because how would they? I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't out in front, waving a flag. I kind of just, I didn't quite step back. It's
Mm-hmm.
more that people took him and took him to all these new places,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't interfere.
Yeah.
I just allowed him to go on this great ride that he was going on. Everyone was taking him on these trips and rides to go to all these new places,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really fun. And I had things going on with my life. I spent 9 years, like I said earlier, doing the
Mm-hmm.
daily web comic. And when I was done with that, I was really burnt out. I had drawn over 3,000, comics consecutively every day, for 9 years.
A lot of output.
Yeah, it was. And so I was a little burnt out, and then just other things in life were a focus for a while. I'm a very creative person, so I was
Mm-hmm.
doing, whether it was music or building something, carving, that kind of thing. So, yeah, and then I guess it was really not until last year that I finally returned, to the Bitcoin roller coaster guy. And the first art I did was really I was just inspired out of just seeing that the halvening was coming. And I thought, oh, I have an idea for that. And I made a little animation for that. And I put it up on Twitter. And I had nobody following me on Twitter. And then eventually I just decided to do more. And luckily, and I put up a new website just this past year. And I was able to, I didn't even have bitcoincoaster.com. I didn't even have that URL. But a guy that I have become friends with traded me for it.
Interesting.
So, yeah, if you've seen, there's a 3D printed version of Bitcoin roller coaster guy.
Might have seen that around.
Yeah, so this guy had, I think he actually paid somebody to design it. And then after he paid somebody to design it, he released it, to the world and posted about it. Well, after I saw it, I wrote him and I said, hey, can you print me one of these? I'll pay you for it. And, he didn't take any money. Of course, he printed it and he mailed it to me like a gentleman. And then we were working on a project together, and it didn't end up working out just because our schedules were really busy and stuff. But we've kept in close contact. Anyway, he owned bitcoincoaster.com. And so not too long ago, him and I did a little trade for that. So I was pretty fortunate to, get such a good URL for him because of my friend. So.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And have you, this whole, obviously you create a piece of viral art, culture, whatever. It has a potential to, change some people's lives. And you've seen this with meme culture things. Someone is just like that, what's the guy's name who was on the TikTok on the skateboard drinking the ocean spray?
Oh,
and
yeah, I don't know his name, but great guy, yeah.
Yeah, just one little clip that goes, and then he just makes a whole bunch of money off of it. And it's pretty crazy how, you just take one little, thoughtless social media post like everyone does, and then you can go crazy. Has this kind of the viral quality of the Bitcoin roller coaster guy ended up actually serving you in the long run? Has it been making it easier for you to pursue your artistic endeavors and things like that?
Yes, it has now. As I mentioned, I was not really involved, for quite some time. But when I made the decision last year to, come back to him and bring him back to life from my own perspective. He'd already been living this life through everyone else, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that, but I wanted to give him my own, flair. So since then, luckily, people have been really accepting. As soon as people found out, oh, this is the guy, I've been embraced very much so by other Bitcoin artists. And, they've been really kind and really nice. And, people have been excited. People, I guess, so far it seems like people are excited to know, oh, there is a person who made this, you see things on the internet and you just think oh, this is, created, when the world was begun and people just share it,
Yeah, it was just birthed from the ether.
Right, exactly. Luckily that was, originally when I did post him, I did put my Brainless Tales logo on the original one, which was the name of my old comic. So, it's pretty easy to verify that was me. But yeah, so I have not gotten rich. I've barely made any money off Bitcoin Roller Coaster Guy. I sell some things online through a Zazzle store, but really, I haven't gotten there yet. But I'm going there. I hope so. I really just want to bring some high quality stuff to people that want it. So I know people want more and more Bitcoin roller coaster guy stuff that I don't have. But hopefully soon. But at the same time, art has always been a passion of mine.
Yeah.
And I'm not I'm not great at being an artist businessman.
Yeah,
Um, I
that's
like to
you
do
know.
what I like to do, so
Yeah, that's kind of how it ends up working out. A lot of people get they're too good at doing the actual thing to be focused on doing other things, which
right.
it makes perfect sense, but it just sometimes people like lament that. But the space has come a pretty long way as far as like the crypto art space. Like I'm not sure if you've seen behind you here, there's a crypto art of the Happening, and it has a little QR code there, and it's a little paper wallet in there. So if you want to like store your life savings in your painting and then run away with it or whatever, it kind of works for that. And there's been so many other things happening, especially the NFT craze.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
yeah, it's something that I didn't know what it was, and then I heard about. Okay, I kind of get the concept, and then I saw people selling, I guess, NFTs of the most ludicrous things that like I don't see any necessarily value personally in, and making a killing. And there's a friend of mine, Ken Bozak, who's basically the guy who went like a hog wild on NFTs in like the most like just making like partnering with some artist to make little animated gifs of himself and just flipping NFTs to and making an absolute killing off of that kind of stuff. It's so as like the art space, the crypto art space kind of evolves. First off, have you kept up with it much these days about like the new kind of things like the NFT craze? And then what are your kind of thoughts on where it's ended up today?
Yeah, actually, I find NFTs to be fascinating. I actually really love them,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to admit that I don't own any.
Mm.
I've been cautious because I feel like, oh my goodness, if I start buying NFTs, I might get that collector bug and just go hog wild and spend all my money on these things.
Yeah.
I think they're awesome, and there are some really great artists
Mm-hmm.
doing NFTs. So I find them really exciting. Um, you know, so yes, I wasn't paying attention to NFTs until last year, and then once I saw that, I you know, started paying a little attention to that, and it is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be something that I think people go crazy over is because it's something that's an originality component to the digital space where everything is super easily reproducible, everything's super easy to fake, everything's super easy to just copy, and like I can imagine if you came out like the Bitcoin roller coaster guy himself came out with a series of NFTs of those works and stuff, I think those would sell for pretty high, especially if they got, publicized in some sort of a conjunction with, something kind of like something bigger or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly has been interest on Twitter. People have mentioned turn this into an NFT, numerous times.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said, "I'll pay you $500,000 for the NFT," which I
Yeah.
thought was quite humorous.
Well, it's
Um,
funny thing. It's not just humorous. It's like a real offer. Like that's what these things can go for these days.
well, yeah, it's interesting. I like I said, I do really like it. At first I didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I think lots of people when they first hear about it, was like, doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? But then it didn't take me too long to realize that it's really it's really just about saying, I own this.
Mm-hmm.
People love to own things. Collectors love to own things. My father loved to collect things,
Mm-hmm.
and we would see something out at a store, an antique store, and my dad would say, "Oh, see that? I have one of those." Like I had never seen it. Where is it, Dad? Oh, it's in the barn. You
Yeah.
can't see it today, but I own it. So he liked just knowing that he owned something, even if he couldn't see it every day. And that's how collectors are.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball card collectors, do they look at their cards every day? No, they're all closed up in a drawer somewhere to keep them away from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so collecting is not about the physicalness of it as much as it is just saying I own that. And with an NFT, you can verify it.
Yeah.
So there's a verification there that you do own that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
I
for sure.
yeah.
I kind of like the interface also between the physical and digital world when people like issue NFTs of physical items, and
Right.
especially like as you use as sort of like a proof of authenticity of the item, where, for example, just think about the example of like saying, "Oh, I own it. I got one in my barn or whatever," and
Right.
then someone breaks into your barn and takes it, and now they have it, and this thing that you worked so hard to like to get one of, now just someone else has it. You know, what do they say? Possession is 9/10 of the law or whatever it is. Now they got it, and it's that like, oh, it was mine. That connection isn't quite there without some sort of a, documentation. But if you buy the NFT that just says that this is mine, here's the control, here's the private keys of it, and then someone takes the item at some point, it's like, well, that item's kind of worthless without the NFT pairing, right? And
Right.
so that kind of keeps it with it. And also about like artist royalties and things like that. Like a lot of NFTs that have built in, I guess, percentages for the original creator. Like every time there's a sale or a resale, then you get a little bit of a kickback to the creator. And can you imagine if like getting like a roller coaster guy NFT, and then just the number of times it's been passed around all across the internet, if it all like kind of comes back, and then you sort of you I guess you kind of like trace it all back to the origin. And yeah, I mean, I think that could be a really change the way the art world works for sure.
I agree. I think that the retaining that artist royalty is an amazing, solution, because if artwork is being sold and resold,
Mm-hmm.
then it obviously has value and people are enjoying it. They want to own it. So the idea that the artist can be rewarded on a resale is pretty awesome. And I think most of those percentages are, fairly reasonable. They're not like really high.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think it should stay. I mean, the bulk of the profits should go to the owner. I think that just makes the most sense. But it is really amazing that artists can be rewarded after the fact. Especially imagine if an artist sells something for only a little bit, and then a year later somebody resells it for a lot. It's nice that the artist can then benefit from that.
Yeah.
It's obviously encouraging then to the artist to do more work. So
Yeah, it definitely gets rid of that sort of situation where you have the penniless artist just cranking out works and he just like selling a few at the back of his truck just to make ends meet. And then those become priceless. And the guy's like, if only I had, if only this could be priceless like sooner. But then
right,
in that case, you could still sell the basic one to pay the bills, but then it gets resold at some exorbitant fee or whatever, and then
right,
some of it still kind of goes back to the artist. It's also something that like a lot of artists are not recognized during their own lifetimes,
right,
and it would be interesting to have like a generational sort of an effect where it's like, okay, well, grandpa painted a whole bunch of stuff and they kind of sold for peanuts, but there's the NFTs associated with it. It's all like we all control, his family controls the end result NFT address, and then they become famous later, and then all of a sudden they're the money still goes with the family or whoever, and then it's just kind of, it's not like a sort of a forgotten fact, like, oh yeah, like with sort of source of bitterness every time you see like, oh yeah, grandpa's painting did really really well, but we're all broke, and it's like,
right,
and you start just get bad attitudes about like, oh, the way the world works, and
right. Yeah, because you know what? I think, you bring up a really good point, and that is that I think most people, want creators to be rewarded for the good work that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
I see it very often online from people or just talking to people. If they're buying music or buying art, they want the creator to be rewarded, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes you feel good, right? Like, oh, I love this piece of art, whether it's music or physical or digital. and you're buying it, of course you want that money to go to the creator, right? Like that just feels right. And I think most people really agree with that, and they want to see that happen. So I think it's a very positive thing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a crazy way to have come from just the original parts of the blockchain as well, where we
Right.
just like, oh, we just send and receive a transaction, that's it, and then maybe do another couple cool things, and now all of a sudden we have like all this extra stuff sort of associated with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is really interesting.
Yeah. So tell me about that little running guy behind you.
Yeah, so this is my latest bit of artwork, and it is a sculpture that I made. It's called Running Bitcoin, and it's in commemoration of Hal Finney. Hal Finney was one of the very first people to use Bitcoin. He tweeted at the very, very beginning, "Running Bitcoin." So that
Very
was
matter
his
of
tweet.
factly.
Yes, and that's what this is inspired by. That is the running Bitcoin. So Hal Finney actually was there at the beginning, and he was corresponding with Satoshi Nakamoto, and Satoshi sent the very first on-chain person-to-person transaction to Hal Finney. It was 10 Bitcoins. And so that's like, Hal Finney's biggest claim to fame. But Hal Finney was involved really before Bitcoin, because prior to Bitcoin, there was this thing called Hashcash that Adam Back had created, right? And that was a proof of work is what it was. It was used, I think, for email, right? To basically say, like, this isn't spam email. This is a real email. Look, I typed it out. And it had this hash in there. And Hal Finney took Hashcash and he turned it into a reusable proof of work. It was a token that could be passed on. So very much like Bitcoin. So Hal Finney created reusable proof of work. I think it was pronounced RPOW. So it's RPOW.
Yeah.
Hal Finney created that, and that really, I think, was a big inspiration for Bitcoin to be created, because that same idea, a reusable proof of work token that can be passed on and can be verified anywhere in the world. So very, very similar. And so, Hal Finney obviously was into the cryptography space at the time. And then after, and so this the sculpture, then, obviously it's inspired by his tweet, saying running Bitcoin. And he was also a runner. Hal Finney was a runner. He loved to run. He ran some half marathons and such. And unfortunately, in 2009, after Bitcoin was created and released, Hal Finney was working towards running a full marathon. He never got to run a full marathon because a few months after Bitcoin was released, he was diagnosed with ALS. And ALS is a terrible degenerative disease that basically stops all your muscles from working over time. And so later in 2009, Hal Finney ran his final race that he ran in, and he wore the number 415. And so I'll just see if I can pull this up and show this.
Yeah.
So this little guy's carrying Hal's number from his final race, 415. There's also some really small letters and numbers in here as well. They are in order F4184FC5, so it incorporates into the 415, and that's the beginning of the beginning characters of the hash from the very first Bitcoin transaction that Satoshi sent to Hal Finney.
Interesting.
So that's worked in there too. So the 415 number, actually, those digits did exist right at the beginning of that hash, which was pretty interesting. So 5 years after that, Hal Finney died from ALS, and so I'm auctioning off this sculpture on Hal Finney's 65th birthday on May 4th, and half of the money that is paid for it will go to an ALS organization. It's one in California. I've been corresponding with Fran Finney, Hal's wife, and she had suggested this particular organization. So that's the one that we're gonna, share the money with. So I'm real excited about it.
Yeah.
To me, it's a really special project. I just was inspired, and luckily I had been invited into an artist group for a brand new Bitcoin auction website called Scarce City.
Scarce City. That's a good play on words there.
Yeah. So the website is actually scarce.city. And they are still working on their site. So it's not open to anybody yet, because they're still in development, but they've been doing auctions. And it's all Bitcoin. So far it's all Bitcoin related art, and all the auctions are for Bitcoin, and they use a mechanism where you don't need an account. You can just, you make a bid, but then you have to collateralize your bid, which means you just pay them a small percentage of what your bid is, and they prefer to use Lightning Network for that. So you can do on-chain if you want, but mostly it's Lightning. And so that's how that works.
Yeah.
And so, luckily I was able to work out with Scarce City to have the auction on Hal Finney's birthday, because thus far they've only been doing one auction a week on their site. So
yeah, so that ended up like kind of like working out pretty well.
yeah, the timing worked out really well. And so, Hal Finney, he was really one of the most important people in the Bitcoin story, to me. He was, like I said, he grabbed Bitcoin as soon as Satoshi put it out. He grabbed it. He was using it. And I've learned a lot about Hal Finney in the process of this.
Yeah.
And he just sounds like such an amazing guy. He loved freedom. He was a very freedom-minded guy, He was a very positive person. He had a lot of passions and hobbies. He was a pilot. He had his pilot's license, and he liked to do magic.
Yeah.
And, he liked to run, of course, and he also liked to bicycle. And there's other things, but I'm not quite remembering them. But, he worked in the 80s. He worked developing video games for, I think, Intellivision and Atari. And that's really cool.
Way back in the day.
Yeah. And he also worked on the very first versions of PGP, Pretty Good Privacy, with Phil Zimmerman. Is that the guy's name? And then he ended up working at PGP Inc. So he was basically worked on the very first versions of that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, something a lot of us still use today,
Yeah, absolutely. So all around, and he was a really smart guy. He was valedictorian of his class when he graduated high school. Sounds like a really interesting guy, and if you read some of his posts online, you can tell that he's just a nice guy. And so, unfortunately he's not here, but, when he died, he was, I might get the wording wrong, but he was like cryo frozen. So,
yeah.
So maybe one day in the future, Hal Finney will be back.
Yeah, I mean,
possible.
Just think about 10, 20 years ago, if any of us would have imagined where we'd be today, just in terms of the crypto universe. I mean, I remember in 2013 when I moved up to New Hampshire, I was trying to figure out how to get one of Peter Schiff's gold-backed debit cards, because I didn't want to use fiat at that point, and I didn't. And when I started learning about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I was like, oh, this is so much better. But it just can you imagine 20 years ago thinking, oh, today there's people, you can live without a bank account, all on this digital freedom money that anyone can create, anyone can audit the supply, and has actual digital scarcity and can let people escape the problems of inflation and things like that. Some people would say, yeah, you're crazy, maybe 100 years from now. But then it's just so soon, we're kind of already there.
I agree. I mean, I remember before I knew about Bitcoin, I was focused on gold, silver, anything involved that just was better money than the Federal Reserve note, right? So when Bitcoin came around, when I first heard about it, I wasn't like, I didn't, it sounded neat, but I didn't know if it would catch on, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's incredible to see what has happened. It's unbelievable almost.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard a lot of the same thing. The medical field is not something I'm really too knowledgeable about. Even my grandpa was a doctor, but other than that, and I've been extremely healthy my whole life. So, knock on wood, I haven't had any run-ins with the health system. But just hearing some of the things that seem to be available today, as far as how people are able to reconstruct body parts, they're willing, and the advances in like brain medicine and things like that, and just everything seems so incredible now that I kind of like those who have passed are past, and I don't want to get too much of a high hope about someone like Hal Finney, but I mean, why not? I wouldn't be 100% surprised if they couldn't bring him back in like a few more decades or something. Anything's possible.
It's possible. It is possible because he was preserved. So it certainly is possible. I think I read that he thought it was a long shot.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was like, oh, this will definitely work. I believe he thought it was a long shot, but to him it was worth it. So.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like he had other things to achieve in order to justify his existence either. It's like he did a lot in the time that he was here, and so I definitely done enough for sure.
Yeah.
So where could people find more out about this auction in particular? I know you mentioned before, was it the Scarce City? Scarce.city?
The auction will take place on scarce.city. But the auction isn't posted yet.
Yeah.
But there'll be other auctions actually between the time now that we're recording this and then May 4th when my auction is. There'll be some other auctions that people could check out. But my website is the best place to go, which is bitcoincoaster.com. And then,
like Bitcoin Coaster.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then from there, too, they could, at the bottom of my website is a link to my Twitter. I'm, relatively active on Twitter. I usually don't post a lot, but I keep things up to date there.
Yeah.
So if I have something going on, I'm posting it. So if people want to follow along, for some fun, I'll be posting more animated GIFs and fun things like that. I've been creating, new things with the Bitcoin roller coaster guy. I did a really fun Christmas one. It was, Bitcoin Claus coming to town. It was a song I sang and everything.
That's fun.
People could listen to me sing. He was in a sleigh being pulled by flying bulls, of course.
Yeah.
Instead of reindeer. I did a miner one too. Bitcoin miners, his Bitcoin roller coaster guy with his miner hat and a pickaxe, over his back. So that's the best place to follow me, and check things out are those places.
Yeah, and personally can't wait until there's a host of different NFTs or those kinds of things because, I would definitely try to buy some of them, but I know there's other people who are way more NFT centric who'd just be all over that kind of stuff and be like, I have one of those, I have one of the originals, and
Right.
Yeah.
I hope NFTs are in the future for me. I've been really focused on real art. Not real art.
Like physical art.
Physical art, that's what I meant to say. And animated GIFs, which basically could be NFTs today, right? But, we'll see. I guess I'm watching this space to see if there's if somebody brings back like a platform on Bitcoin for NFTs. They've existed before, so there we'll see some more. Because I guess what I learned, I didn't even know this until recently, but I guess there was like these rare Pepes was like a thing, and they were like NFTs on Bitcoin. I don't really know that much about it, admittedly, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's for sure. One thing I've been I'd be a little bit more on the sidelines with NFTs myself is because of some of the unsolved, like kind of unanswered questions about it, depending on the implementation. So, for example, where is the actual file that's associated with the NFT? The actual, where is that
Right.
stored? Because there have been some cases of, like, I believe there's one artist who issued a whole bunch of NFTs, and then after he sold them, he changed the image to that of a rug in a literal rug pull to kind of show, like, oh, you think you bought something rare, but like, look what I can do. It's kind of like
Right.
a lesson to not buy, I guess, a decentralized NFT linking to a centralized file storage system. And so, like, there's a bunch of little things that need to be ironed out for it to be like fully live up to its potential. But
Yeah, and I would what I would say to that is that you know that's interesting.
yeah, of course.
But it obviously the artist chose to do that, so he's making a good point with that. But he's
Hmm.
also showing, I guess, that maybe you wouldn't want to buy an NFT from that
Yeah,
guy.
or at least look into
That's
how the file is hosted. Is it on
right.
IPFS? Is it on some sort
Al-
of gateway that
Right.
can be?
Although who knows? Maybe those are worth even more now, right? Just because of the rug.
Yeah, I think that like especially if the rug stays up,
Yeah.
it could be especially if the creator still has control over that file, then it's almost special because whatever it is, it might be a rug, but then you might change it to something else, and it's just like I have the thing that can be changed, and
Right. Yeah. So
yeah.
it is interesting, for sure. It's there are a lot of details involved, and with selling physical art is a little easier in that people
Hmm.
understand it because it's the way things have been done for so long. So, and when I say people, I mean me.
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yeah, of course.
Even though this is the first Bitcoin sculpture that I'll ever sell.
Hmm.
I I haven't really sold much physical Bitcoin art at all.
Hmm.
So it's not like I've got a big bank full of Bitcoins from selling Bitcoin art. I don't. So
Yeah. Well, the whole world has a big bank full of Bitcoin gifts and such because of your
yeah,
work. So yeah, thanks very much for that. And yeah, so thanks for coming on to chat with me today. I'll definitely send people over to check out the rest of your work as well as the auction. And yeah, I hope you have a really great
thanks.
one.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. No problem.